Yes, things aren't always as they seem. We're here at Culver Studios, the date, July 16th, 1989. The purpose, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the making of the movie Gone with the Wind. And here is Marty Didiak.
Hello and welcome. About 500 friends and members of the Culver City Historical Society are celebrating the movies today, particularly the 50th anniversary of Gone with the Wind.
In September of 1918, Thomas Ince, a very important film pioneer in Los Angeles' history, built this studio, known as the Thomas Ince Studios. They made many a film here in the silent era until 1924, when Thomas Ince prematurely died. Right after that time, DeMille, the famous Cecil B. DeMille, took it over and was known as the DeMille Studio. And after that time, it changed hands over and over and over again, many a time, and many a famous film were shot at this lot. Films like King of Kings that DeMille shot. After he left, Pathé took it over and they kept shooting silent films here. And finally, when the sound era came in, the studio was known as the RKO Pathé Studios. Here at RKO Pathé, some films of very familiar nature were shot. Films like King Kong, for example, and other films of Selznick, which were the most important of the Selznick era, were shot at this studio. Films like Since He Went Away, for example. The studio, of course, culminated in its greatest triumph with Gone with the Wind in 1939, all shot here at the back lot and on these stages.
To begin our interviews today, we have Jerry Maren with us, and would you like to introduce your wife?
Of course, this is my lovely wife, Elizabeth.
Hello.
She works in films also. She does stunts for children.
For those of you who don't know, Jerry Maren was one of the Lollipop Kids in The Wizard of Oz.
That's right.
How many Lollipop Kids were there?
3. Me and 2 others, and the others gentlemen have passed on.
Oh. Tell us a little bit about being a Lollipop Kid.
Oh, it was exciting because, you know, I like to sing and dance, and that was one of the reasons why they made me one of the Lollipop guys, because I could sing and dance. And it was, the gentleman on my left was called Harry Earl, and I remember him from a movie years ago called The Unholy Three with Lon Chaney Sr. And he's the only little man I ever seen in my life. I mean, I've never seen one in person, but I mean in a movie. Mm-hmm. Then when I seen him in person, I was thrilled, and then I found out he was going to be with me in the Lollipop thing, so it was fun.
How did you perceive Culver City when you came here? What do you remember about Culver City?
Oh, I don't know. We arrived in the middle of the night. Well, not in the middle of the night, about 1 a.m. And so we all were put into the Culver City Hotel. And then there wasn't enough room, so we got the hotel across the street. I forgot the name of it. It's a little hotel.
The
right
Washington
across
Hotel?
the street. What's the
Probably
name?
the Washington Hotel.
Well, it was like a... Yeah, well, anyways, the overflow had to stay at the other hotel.
How many of you arrived together?
Oh, I imagine we come from all over. It's about 120 of us, and about 120. So it was exciting for me because I never seen a little person before in my life. You know, seeing them, I got all excited. You know, oh, look at that. Does he walk like me? Does he play baseball? You know what I mean.
Sounds like you had a lot of fun.
Oh, we did, especially that, because the excitement of being in a movie was enough, but then seeing about 120 little people all at once, little women, you know, little men, it was fun.
Yes, I understand Culver City was the land of the Munchkins in 1938 or 39.
Oh, yes, it was 1938 and 39, November 11th. I'll never forget it. I was sleeping with 2 other fellas up in the top floor of the Culver City Hotel, and I heard this noise, this big mute band coming, you know, da-da-da-da-dum. So it woke me up, and I turned over and says, hey, guys, wake up. I think they're having a welcoming parade for us in Culver City. So we looked out the window, and I said, see, I told you, you know. And then it was, all I seen was servicemen. It was Armistice Day. A coincidence, November 11th. So that's why it'll always be my anniversary, November 11th. So I've been here over 50 years.
So, do you still sing the Lollipop song?
Oh, yeah, I sing it if you want to hear it.
Sure.
You really want to hear it?
Sure.
We represent the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild. And in the name of the Lollipop Guild, we wish to welcome you to Munchkin Land. Boom, 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 boom.
You do
We have
that
a
very
picture
well.
of it here, if you want to see a picture of it. There,
We have
where's the envelope?
The lady
Oh.
took it.
We have one for you later.
I mean, if you, no, I have, I just want if they want
Yeah,
it.
he was the one in the
So-
middle with the lollipop. Yeah, he was.
That's how I told my mother, Mom, I'm the one with the lollipop, so you don't make a mistake. Because we had so much, you know, hair makeup, and of course the makeup was different then. I believe that was the first time they used skull caps. You know, that plastic stuff that goes over the head, and then they decorated with flowers or whatever the situation called for. But it was different, and it was, we all made up in a basement of one of the rehearsal studios, you know, and it was cold and damp, and we had about 25 barber chairs straight down, you know, all makeup men. So every makeup man had their duty, like the lollipop guys and the soldiers, the townsfolk, the city folks, and it was fun, you know. So, because they had to do it that way because they had to make us up every day. So if they had the same ones, they'd know exactly what to do.
So what have you done since?
Little thing. Huh?
Tell us about what you've enjoyed since.
Oh, I've been, do you remember Buster Brown? Well, that's my dog, Ty. He lives in a shoe. I'm Buster Brown. Look for me in there, too. That's 5 years at NBC,
Okay.
radio and television. Also, Little Oscar, the world's smallest chef. Remember Little Oscar in the Wienermobile? That's me.
Oscar
I
Mayer.
give out the little weenie whistles.
Mark Brothers at the circus.
And then I was with Chuck Barris for a couple of years on the Gong Show with the guy that threw the confetti. And Elizabeth was also in the Gong Show. She worked in quite a few sketches.
You were with Andy Williams.
Oh, I was with Andy Williams for 2 years. And then 11 years with McDonald's. I was Mayor McCheese, Big Mac, sometimes the Hamburglar, whatever it was. But I've been pretty busy since 1938.
Look who I see coming. It must be a ghost. No, it must be. It's Rhett Butler himself. Look at that. His ghost actually came out to meet us. I think he'll have to say a couple words. So here he comes. The Selznick office is where all the preparations remain for going to win another Selznick films, of course. And of course, this is where Vivian Lee and all the others were meeting with David O. Selznick, which is his office right there. Come on up here, Red, for a second. You can have a word to the audience. Just say a word.
Contrary to popular belief, frankly, my dear, I do give a
I'd like to introduce Fred Crane, who was Brent Tarleton in Gone with the Wind. You were one of the Tarleton twins, as I recall.
Yes, they were very testy about calling them the Tarleton twins. One of the orders of David O. Selznick was to say the Tarleton boys.
Tarleton boys.
Yeah,
okay.
because we really weren't twins. We met here in the studio. George Besselo was his name. Later on, he changed it to Reeves.
I was just going to say, he was famous as Superman later on.
Definitive Superman. I thought he was the greatest Superman.
That's great. So, you're back on the lot today. Tell me a little bit about your feelings being back on the old Selznick lot.
I will give you an answer as if I were the man who wrote cited sub sank same. I'll say good. Great. It's nice to be here. There are a few changes.
Tell me
but
about the
it's a
changes.
beautiful day. Well, there used to be a pool right over there by that back door. And I remember after the screen test for one of the twins with Kukar, with Marcella Martin feeding the lines behind the camera, I came in to get my first check, which I thought was the most money they ever had in the world. I said, if I had this money every week for the rest of my life, this would be wonderful. $50 a week.
Oh my goodness.
And I met George Kukar there. George, of course, was still director on the picture. And he said, just saw the screen test. He said, it was fine. He said, you know something, you keep your nose clean and you're going to be a fine little actor. I said, thank you, Mr. Zukor. He said, you got to get that name right or we're going to send you back to those bourgeois in Louisiana. And then later on, that handsome lady that's over there that's going to be talking was Victoria Fleming. Her father came on the picture as director, and we did the opening scene again.
So, how did you end up in Gone with the Wind? Was this Were you an actor by trade before that?
That's a long story. I mean, if you have a couple of hours, I mean, I
Well,
can tell
if
you
you shorten
all
it up a
about
little bit.
No, I will not do that. I will give you a quick answer. I will
Okay.
not contract this story
Okay.
by doing it in Pittman shorthand, only audible.
All right.
Sometime I will tell you. It's very interesting.
Were you
I'd
an
never
actor
been
before?
here before. I'd been an actor since I was 11 in New Orleans, Louisiana, where I came from. When I came out here, this is the first time I saw a studio. I hadn't read Gone with the Wind, and I read 3 times. Charles Richards, George Cukor, and David O. Selznick, with none other than Vivian Lee. And they signed me up before the screen test. That's it.
Oh,
That's about as short as I can make it.
that sounds pretty
There's a lot
exciting.
in between. Yeah. Well, it was exciting then, but I didn't know the implications of it. And I had no idea that the vehicle I was in was going to become the quintessential hallmark, I like to say it, of the cinematographer's art.
Who was most memorable on the set at any given time?
Everybody.
Okay.
Everyone. I can't think of a greater crew or a greater cast that could have been assembled for anything. Selznick, of course, was an old campaigner putting crews together. He was terrific at that. He knew how to do it. And even though he was ambivalent about how he should present it, he had a heavy trip on his back. This was Selznick's folly. He said, it will never work. Well, here it is, 50 years and $2 billion later. Too bad that he didn't have a piece of that action. His brother did, and I think someone in the Whitney family did, and they're still collecting. I don't know how Mr. Turner feels about that.
Can you all hear me, by the way? No? Can you hear me now? Yes, I figured now you would. This is the famous door where I just mentioned to you where Vivian Lee went in. The carriage pulled up right in front of the door here. The front of this whole door was faced as 12 Oaks. It looked just like a mansion. They fitted doors on. They had this open. They fitted doors on, and when she walked in, the camera literally followed her in right into the set, which was inside the stage. A lot of people ask me, where was the Atlanta burning scenes? Where were many of the exteriors? Again, to repeat, the exterior scenes were all shot on the famous 30 acres, they called it. It's at the end of Ince Boulevard and Higuera Street, which is right here at the side of the studio, the east side of the studio. There's an old gate there. It's now a big industrial park, which goes all the way up to the full length of Higuera. It's a big, sort of like a triangle piece of property. That is where all the sets stood. They were all ripped down about 10 years ago. I forgot exactly, but I and my friends and many people I know have managed to take pictures of what was left.
We have Victoria Fleming with us today, who is the daughter of Victor Fleming, who was a director on Gone with the Wind. What was it like growing up with the director of Gone with the Wind?
Well, it was very sweet. He was very fond of us. He was overly fond of my sister and myself. And he did everything he could for our comfort and our well-being. He kept us away from the movie industry because he thought it would be a bad influence on us. So we went to a Catholic school, and we had an island in Canada and a ranch down in Escondido, and we had places to go.
So you were never on the set of Gone with the Wind?
No.
Did he talk
I was
about
born
it
in
at all?
1935, so I was only about 3 when they made that picture. He didn't talk about it, no.
He didn't
Not at
talk
all.
about-
No.
Tell us a little bit more about him.
Well, he was very handsome and tall, and very much a macho man, very masculine. The ladies loved him, all the women loved him, and they used to sit in his car at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, hoping he'd take them home with him. And I can't tell you any more about him because I don't remember.
Do you think that the movie industry did have a bad influence on your life? Or
No.
do you think it was a good influence?
It had no influence on my
No
life.
influence at all. And what do you enjoy doing now?
I have 3 cats, and I have an apartment overlooking the ocean, and I go to restaurants, and I do a little shopping, and I have friends, and I'm a lady of leisure. I'm studying Spanish right now.
You are.
Yeah.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Some of the furniture decoration was here on this lot for many years. But over the years, when the studio was a rental studio in the 1960s, in between, in 1957, it became Desilu Culver, where Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, remember they formed Desilu. And mostly all the Lucy shows were filmed in Hollywood, but Desi ran this studio and filmed his shows. As I mentioned before, Whirly Birds and Untouchables was here, and other television shows. But anyway, over those years, the studio was pilfered of much of its Gone with the Wind material.
Mary Anderson, how delightful to have you with us today.
Thank you.
We have the real Maybelle Merriweather from Gone with the Wind. Tell us what it was like to be Maybelle.
Well, it was a very, very exciting part of my life. I was a child, practically, in Alabama, and George Cukor was touring the South and looking for young talent to be in Gone with the Wind, and receiving tremendous publicity by a campaign by Russell Birdwell, who was his publicity director, looking for Scarlett. But they thought I could find a place for me. He saw me in a little play at school, George Cukor, the director, did. And so finally they produced the picture and sent for me. And my mother, my aunt, and I came out to the Globe. First we went to New York and had a test. And then I went home and went to school. And then I came out here and was enrolled in the Hollywood Studio Club for Girls, which was a very safe place for young girls to live. And you were fully protected and good meals, and everybody was very solicitous of one's care. And then they started the picture, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience from a little girl with hayseed sticking out of her ears from Alabama. And I was on the set all the day, and George Cukor, who originally directed the picture, would send for me for any little bit that was to be going on. Eventually, he was replaced by Victor Fleming, but the picture continued, and it was marvelous in every way, and they were all very kind, and they sent me to school, and I played this little part that every year gets smaller and smaller because when they cut it for television, it was reduced. But I'm the last one on the credits, Mary Anderson, Maybelle Merriweather.
But you're on the credits.
Yeah, I'm there, and it was a wonderful experience. And then I stayed in Hollywood, so it was a great introduction to be here and to meet all the marvelous people like Clark Gable and Vivian Lee, and Leslie Howard, Laura Hope Cruz, all the great character actors of the day, Henry Davenport, and they all took an interest in me and tried to help me. And after that, I went to New York and did plays, and then I did pictures here. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And Selznick was very kind to me, very good.
Do you have any favorite stories about the filming of Gone with the Wind that you'd like to share with us?
Well, just the fun of, remember the fire of being allowed to be on the set then, and you had to be well guarded, and all that red dust would come and completely engulf you, and the excitement. It was just wild, wild, beautiful picture making, and being with the most talented people of I suppose, in the history of pictures, almost.
Did you have any idea that this would be the success it was?
Yes, everybody knew it was a great success. The book was a great success. Margaret Mitchell was recognized, and at that time, Mr. Selznick paid $50,000 for the picture. Now that's nothing, but at that time, it was a tremendous sum of money. It made history. And the publicity campaign was worldwide. It was, one knew that one was making history, yes.
We have with us today our esteemed mayor, Joselle Smith, to my left. She is known in some other countries as Her Worship, by the way. However, she has condescended to MC our Clark Gable lookalike contest today. So I'll just hand it over to her. Here, Joselle.
Thank you very much, Julie. Condescended isn't much like it. I was thrilled when I was asked because, like I think I stated, this is as high as it's going to go, folks, I think, unless I start shouting. So let me know if it gets some distortion. Born in Culver City, I'm a real Gone with the Wind brat myself. 50 years old today, along with the baby of the bunch who's here. I'm going to put one last call in for casting director Marvin Page. Marvin Page, who's one of our judges, please come forward to join Jane Withers and Jerry Maren. We have our contest before us today, folks. This is going to be difficult. The judges have their work cut out for them. First of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our judges. We have with us Jerry Maren. Jerry, will you come forward, please? Jerry's here with his wife, Elizabeth, who's in the sidelines right over there. They live in Hollywood, and you'll recognize Jerry from the years that he spent as Buster Brown. He was Little Oscar, the world's smallest chef. He was one of the original lollipop kids in The Wizard of Oz. One of his latest appearances was in the feature film Under the Rainbow, a reunion of a lot of the little folk from The Wizard of Oz. And he's done a number of television appearances. Jerry's still very active, and he's going to be one of our judges today. Jane Withers, please stand up and wave. Jane is always a favorite. She's got that bubbly personality that we all love. She wants to be mayor of Culver City. She is not going to get that chance. She was in hundreds and hundreds of feature films. Giant was one that you may remember. She was Josephine the plumber for close to 18 years. She's still lovely, she's still vivacious and very active. Jane's current project is she's bringing out of storage her collection of some 14,000 dolls, some 2,500 teddy bears. She's taking that show on the road to benefit hungry and homeless children, and that's a terrific project. And the elderly, her number one concern. Glad to hear that. And since I'm approaching that myself, what we're going to do is I'll introduce each of our Clark Gable lookalikes. Each one is going to do a short walk before our judges. Going to ask them to do their favorite line or two that's straight out of Rhett Butler or Clark Gable, and finish it off with the ever-popular Frankly, My Dear, I Don't Give a Damn. And now your applause or your cheers is not going to sway our judges at all. They're going to have to make their own decisions. Let me tell you about the prize. First prize, and big and only prize, folks, is a casting session. It's provided by Applebox Productions, who does a number of top commercials. And Diane Pannone, who's office manager for Applebox, is here to present that certificate. They'll also get a brick from the original Lowe's Theater on Peachtree Street in Atlanta, where Gone with the Wind premiered some 50 years ago. Okay, we ready? The runners-up will get some Memories of Me picture frames, and I'm sure they'll have a lot of souvenir photos from today to place in those. Okay, first on our list, Ralph Chelley. Ralph, will you step forward right here in the sunshine? Let's talk about Ralph. Now, Ralph, he decided he wanted to be an artist and an actor when he visited Disneyland. At Disneyland's opening day some 35 years ago, that's what inspired him. Ralph's had feature roles in RoboCop, Getting Even. He's been in Paramedics, Target. He's been seen on a number of episodes of Dallas. Now, Ralph, maybe you want to say a few words in your Clark Gable voice and ended up with the famous Frankly, My Dear.
Why, good day, everyone. Well, you can ring that bell when the cows come home, but I'm going to say my piece. You know, I can remember back aboard the Bounty when we didn't have it so good. All we've had to eat aboard that ship was penguin meat. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
We have with us Frank Jr. Coughlin, and you were a soldier, as I recall, in Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, they call me the collapsing Southern soldier.
The collapsing Southern soldier.
Yeah. Well, if you recall, Rhett Butler and Scarlett were in the wagon, and Melanie and her baby and Butter Kitty Pat were in the back, and they were escaping the burning of Atlanta, and a group of Southern soldiers crossed in front of the wagon, and one young guy walks right up to the camera, goes, and collapses. Then a big guy picks me up. Now what happened? I was very carefully schooled in a southern accent, and when the guy picks me up, I said, put me down, damn you, I can walk. But you know what? It came out that way in the movie, but about 3 or 4 years later, when they brought out the new stereophonic soundtrack, they cut my line out, and I found out later it was because I had said damn an hour and a half before Clark Gable did. And you remember what a big flap that caused? So Selznick, I hear, had always resented that he let my line go through. So when he had a chance with a new soundtrack, my line was gone with the wind.
Tell us a little bit about the filming of Gone with the Wind. What do you remember?
Well, you know what I remember most? See, I started working in movies in 1920 when I was 4 years old. And in 1925, I made a movie here in this studio called The Road to Yesterday, directed by Cecil B. DeMille. And he signed me up to a 5-year contract. So when I came for my interview, right over there to Charlie Richards' office for the casting, I was right at home. This was my old studio. So we went out to the 40 acres, worked all night long doing the scene. But I didn't meet Clark Gable and Janet Leigh then because they were shooting like the camera was in the wagon from their viewpoint, and we were walking past and all that. Oh, I thought that was it. But then 6 months later, I'm called back, and we repeated the whole thing on a sound stage. But now they were shooting on them in the wagon from our view, and we walked in front of the camera, and then they went in for close-ups. And that's when Clark Gable says, oh, my dear, you can tell your grandchildren you've seen the falling of the South. Remember that line? And then he joins the Army. So I caused Clark Gable to join the Army, I guess.
Well, what a claim to fame. You worked here under Cecil B. DeMille. Tell me a little bit about
5
Mr.
years.
DeMille.
Well, see, this studio was built by Thomas Ince.
That's right.
He made a lot of westerns. And when he was killed, about 1924 or 3 or 4, DeMille bought the studio and a lot of properties. And I worked in The Road to Yesterday, and then he signed me up. And the first movie I made here was an Ince property called Whispering Smith. You remember Alan Ladd made it years later at Paramount, but it was made right here the first time with H.B. Warner playing Whispering Smith. And I was the kid in it. And also, while here, I made 4 movies with William Boyd, who later became Hopalong Cassidy. He was my idol. I just loved the man. Made the Yankee Clipper, went to sea on a clipper ship for 6 weeks. Went to the Navajo Indian Reservation for 3 weeks on The Last Frontier, another movie that Ince was going to make, and DeMille acquired it when he bought the studio.
And our last Clark Gable contestant is Kurt Booker. Kurt is an actor from New York. He did 42nd Street on Broadway. He's out here to make a career for himself. He's done some other appearances in New York. He's 30 years old. He's a terrific looking Clark Gable. And Kurt, we're going to ask you to say a few words and end it with that fatal line.
Baby? Baby? Yeah, I love you. Especially you. Mammy, what's that rustling noise I hear under there? Your pettiskirts, Mammy. I don't know, but frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
We have with us the cast member from Gone with the Wind who has probably changed the most in the last 50 years. We have Patrick Curtis, who was Baby Bo, Melanie's baby.
Right.
Welcome to Culver City
Thank you.
again.
Yes, I've worked at this studio many times over the years. I remember the last time I was here, probably when they shot The Untouchables. I was a 9th assistant director, herding cars. That was my job. I just come from Spartacus, herding cattle, so I was moving up in the world.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, they've done a wonderful job. I mean, it's really just beautiful. It should be commended, I think.
You've seen some changes here over the years, then,
yeah.
even though you were very small the first time.
Yeah, but I would come down with my dad and mom, you know, during the war, So I was 4, 5, 6 years old, and I remember it very well.
So tell us how you became Melanie's baby.
Well, my mother was very good friends with the original director, George Cukor, when she was pregnant. My father was even better friends with Victor Fleming. They were motorcycle racing buddies out in the valley. He, Keenan Wynn, my dad, Gable, all of them were sort of, that was their thing. When the end of the world was Sepulveda, you know, if you went west to that, there was nothing, and they'd be out racing. So they were around the house a lot, and when Mr. Cukor was replaced by Mr. Fleming, I didn't lose my job in mid-stroke, as it were, or in mid-contraction, which I think is probably the truth. And that's how it all happened.
How old were you?
Well, the first time I worked, I think I was like 7 or 8 days, something like that. And then the next, when I did this scene, I was about 3.5 months, I think, something like that. The funny thing is with life, the things that 50 years later take on much more importance than they ever had weren't important at the time, and so it's kind of hard to go back and find somebody that remembers, because my family's passed away, so there's nobody really to ask who would remember it. So, I mean, my dad was Gable's age. They grew up sort of close to one another, and my dad was in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and Clark Gable grew up in Cadiz, Ohio, which is about maybe 100 miles away, and they were born, they're the same age, so if they were both alive, they'd be, what, 88, I guess, something like that. So my father was quite old when I was born. He was 40. And so anyway, this is one of those things. But I was, you know, obviously, as time goes by, as Cammie and I, who played Bonnie Blue Butler in the film, she's the youngest next to me, and we tease that unless one of us gets hit by a truck, we're going to be the only ones alive. I mean, in 25 years from now, if I stay in as good a shape as some of the assistant cameramen and guys who are on the film around here, hopefully I'll be around. You know? So I'll see you in 25 years.
Okay.
It's a deal.
So how has the filming of Gone with the Wind affected your life?
Well, I think it's an interesting facet. I've been a producer for about 27, 28 years. That's what I do for a living. So as time goes by and as the years are added on, it is taking on much more importance than it did. I think I only saw it for the first time when I was about 12. I went into Hollywood on my own and saw it at the Chinese Theater, just sitting all by myself. Because before then, it was just a job. I went on. I was never an actor, but I was always a kid that looked much younger than he was. So there's a big advantage to hiring a 12-year-old that can play 8 or an 18-year-old that can play 14. So I was Mom and Pa Kettle's 9th kid, and I was on Leave It to Beaver for a long time. Even though I was in college, I was playing a 14, 15-year-old kid. A big advantage. I didn't have to have my mother or a teacher. I could work 8 hours and all those things. So the picture, I mean, I'm just thrilled to be in it. That's all. And having all these affairs. We were in Cadiz, Ohio a month ago on the 10th for a big do. That's, again, where Clark Gable was born. That was one. The people were so nice and genuine. And, I'll always have fond memories of that. And here today, this is great.
You seem to enjoy the camaraderie
sure.
that the staff and the cast have.
Yeah, sure. We all get along really well. And, from a time when they changed my diapers, now they just pat me on the head,
You're probably delighted to only have to do that now.
Yeah. But we were with Butterfly McQueen in Cadiz, and she birthed me. And that was great. I mean, she's Butterfly McQueen. She's exactly the same. She's prissy. She's exactly who she is. And that was a thrill for me, because we had only met briefly at the 50th screening of the film about 3 or 4 months ago, and I had never met her since, for 50 years. So it was kind of a really nice moment for me.
Why don't you tell us about this picture and why you brought it today?
Well, this is a picture of Melanie and baby Bo, taken as she comes down the stairway at Tara to sort of present the baby to everyone. And the other pictures of me were sort of scrunched up in the wagon. And Olivia went to MGM. This picture doesn't exist as a photo. She went to MGM and had them take a print, one of the frames of the picture, and had them make this picture. And so she signed one to Bo from his mother, Melanie, and to Patrick from Olivia de Havilland, and signed a few, and I've signed a few, and there are maybe 6 of these in the world, and I'd like to present it to the Culver City Historical Society on our behalf, because she would be here if she could, but she can't, so I am.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for the wonderful presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I don't care what it is in this world, it takes gumption to get up and give it a try. And I think each one of these gentlemen, each one of these gentlemen, how's that? Then I'll get that Vermont voice out. Each one of these gentlemen in their own special way, they were gallant and very special to come up and be a part of this very special day. So we want to thank each and every one of you for what you have shared, your time, your ability, your talent with us. And the 3 of us, the 3 judges, have decided that Ralph seems to have the gumption, the chutzpah, the whatever, that Marc Gable has so special.
Thank you very much. They were all great. I think Kurt's heart stopped when she kissed him first, but that's just the way it goes. I want to thank all our contestants, and let's give them all a big round of applause again.